All right. Thanks everyone for being here this morning and joining us for our quarterly meat industry office hours. Today's session, like I said, will be recorded and posted online later for viewing. Today with us, we have Jeff Swenson, livestock and meat specialist here at DATCAP. Jeff will talk a little bit about the Meat Processor Infrastructure Grant Program, which is currently accepting applications through February 24th. We also have Mitch Ald, a co-owner of Duran Smokehouse, who will talk about his experience as a past meat processor infrastructure grant recipient and what that funding did for his project that he had planned and innovations he made to his business. And also we have Paul Humphrey, Director of DATCAP's Bureau of Meat and Poultry Businesses, who will share some updates from his bureau. So Paul, why don't you get us started with your bureau updates?
All right, thank you, Dan. Good morning and welcome. Just a few things to highlight here this morning. I'll be covering our upcoming FSIS on-site audit, some reminders for industry as we look at just trending items that we're seeing that we want to just make sure industry is clear and has the resources needed to best be in compliance. And lastly, discuss a recent FSIS update issued in Notice 5024 regarding non-Listeria monocytogenes Listeria species testing. So we'll review all three of those things. So our on-site audit, every 3 years, FSIS will visit our state and take a closer look at the Bureau to ensure it's implementing the FSIS directives as well as the Bureau's SOPs across the state, as well as looking at our sampling programs, our staffing, training, and compliance programs as well. So past experience tells us they will be here for roughly 2 weeks. They'll visit roughly 16 establishments, and those are typically identified through a number of criteria. They're typically from across the state, hopefully a couple in each of the circuits, and they're usually identified based on the previous year's outcomes. So high volume establishments tend to be selected, establishments that have had product positives, establishments that make high risk category products, as well as establishments that have maybe had recalls or enforcement actions. Those are typically ones that are going to have a closer look from FSIS to make sure that the Bureau is addressing those things on a long-term basis appropriately. But other than that, we don't anticipate any new changes from past audits. If you've been a part of those in the past, we're comfortable with the upcoming audit. So a couple of reminders. Again, retail separation is rather important. I know many meat establishments do multiple things, oftentimes simultaneously. So some may have a retail front under a retail license. Some may also have a meat establishment license in the back of the house, if you will. And some might also be involved in custom processing, wild game processing, all those different things. And so all those things need to be maintained separate and distinct by either time and or space. And so just be very mindful of that as you look at your businesses to just really avoid some of those common areas where crossover does occur potentially, and that opens up your businesses to risk in terms of an inspection perspective, as you know, whether it's labeling, whether it's formulations, whether it's employee movement, all those things introduce you know, things that we're going to be identifying potentially as concerns. Some additional reminders as it pertains to labeling. We've had this across the state here as of late, so I thought it was worth a review. The example label here I borrowed from our friends in Vermont, but it really just shows the basic requirements of a label in kind of a plain fashion, and you can read for yourself what those all are. So just make sure that when you're producing labels for inspected products that they contain all the required features. Those references again are in 9 CFR 317.2, and I also linked here in the presentation, which will be given out afterwards, some additional resources to be helpful, right? So there's a AMSA document as well as a chart that's taken from FSIS training. So that link takes you to a long document, but if you zero in on page 34, that chart there is very helpful in describing which features are required under which circumstances. Some other reminders here, label claims. So some establishments, or if you have producers looking to have private labels produced, looking to make claims about a number of things, all natural, maybe their health claims, maybe it's animal husbandry claims like no antibiotics administered, grass-fed. Maybe there's breed claims about purebred Angus. Maybe there's organic claims, gluten-free, uncured. Maybe there's religious exemption product that you're looking to have labeled. All those things need to be submitted for approval. And that's really true whether you're an FSIS establishment or a BMPB inspected establishment. There's a separate process by which those things occur and are reviewed. But in all those cases, documentation would need to be provided on an approval form or an application type process for whether it's the Bureau or FSIS to review and approve those prior to their use. Again, a helpful link that I've provided here is from FSIS, and it's a guideline on how to substantiate those types of claims when you go to work with your the labeling staff at FSIS or the food scientists here within the Bureau. Lastly, the other update I was going to offer this morning has to do with Notice 5024. 5024 is published, I believe, in December, and FSIS implemented that across all federal establishments January 17th of this year. The Bureau in its implementation will be starting April 1st of this year. And what this is the addition of sampling ready-to-eat products, IVT, which is intensified verification testing, or RLM, routine Listeria monocytogenes testing. Those samples are going to be additionally tested for non-Listeria monocytogenes Listeria species. So looking for non-pathogenic Listeria that are in the environment that would maybe suggest that Listeria could be present as well in the environment, monocytogenes specifically. And so this is more of a broad spectrum analysis of the product and the environment. And the notice details steps that an establishment would take as to how to address those things. So FSIS establishments, you'll likely have heard about this through your inspection staff already. State establishments, you'll be hearing, if you have not so already, be hearing from your inspector by the 20th of February for what's known as an awareness meeting. So they'll meet with you briefly to, again, highlight this notice, discuss what it means to you, and to provide you that advanced notice of those additional testing. So establishments will continue to be notified by your inspection staff or FSIS. There's probably a separate process by which that happens, but nonetheless, you'll continue to be notified of results. If a sample were to come back positive for Listeria species, but negative for LM or Salmonella, that product can be released for normal use. But there's some corrective actions to take as a result. And those corrective actions are detailed in 9 CFR 416-15. So at a minimum, an establishment is required to restore sanitary conditions of surfaces associated with the product test, however that came about. Intensified cleaning sanitation is a common corrective measure that establishment can take to restore sanitary conditions. The establishment can determine and be able to support that parts of 9 CFR 416-15B, such as ensuring disposition are appropriate, do not apply because the product can be released if not positive for LM or Salmonella. The Bureau and, of course, FSIS would recommend, but not require, that establishments conduct follow-up testing to verify corrective actions have been effective. So if you're watching some of what FSIS has been doing recently, there's been updates to different directives such as 5000.1, new revision 8, as well as this notice are really trying to address the now renewed concern and hazard around Listeria in establishments, right? Because they pose a public health threat. So these things are meant to identify Listeria or conditions by which Listeria is going to thrive and address those before they get someone sick. Lastly, again, highlighting upcoming training opportunities. UW has a basic harvest and fabrication workshop coming up towards the end of March. So if you have any new employees that may be of benefit to, take a look at that and see if that works for your establishment. In addition, River Falls, as we talked about in the past, they continue to put on humane handling trainings, very good trainings. And they're now offering them in a bundle fashion. So they're 2 days back to back, covering both effective stunning and equipment maintenance, as well as humane handling and restraint. And so those dates are provided there. And the links, of course, will take you to the website to register. And I've noted there that these upcoming humane handling trainings are eligible for reimbursement. So that's a really great opportunity made available through the grants that Jeff and his team manage through Ag Development, and really a great resource to meet establishments and their employees. The last training there is about putting together a robust systematic approach for humane handling. And that program, as I've been told, when you're done, you'll have a customized program that you can implement at your establishment that would then be able to be reviewed by whether FSIS or the Bureau for that designation as having a robust systematic approach. And that's helpful long-term for you as an establishment. Lastly, the link at the bottom there is for short courses that are available through UW. So there's several throughout the year. Those are not open for registration quite yet, but again, if you have an interest or a need, please check those out. Those are, again, great opportunities for you. All right, well, that concludes my morning remarks. I'll be on the rest of the call for questions at the end.
Thank you, Paul. And as a reminder, in addition to the recording, we'll also be sending out a copy of Paul's slide deck as well. So if you need those links or a reminder of when those trainings will be, we'll have that included as well. So thanks again, Paul. All right, Jeff, are you ready to talk about the meat processor infrastructure grants?
Yes, I am. First of all, Dr. Jeff Sindelar has joined us. I don't know if he is able to stay for the whole call, but Dr. Sindelar at UW-Madison runs a lot of the short courses at UW-Madison. So if there's questions about any of those that Paul mentioned, I'm sure that Dr. Sindelar could answer those or type those in the chat and with your contact information, and he can get back to you. But today we're going to talk about the grant program, the Meat Processor Infrastructure Grant. This would be another round of the state-funded dollars that Governor Evers had put into his budget. And again, this is a smaller pool of money. It's capped at $50,000 per establishment. And I'll have some slides to talk about the application process, where to find the application and things like that. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Mitch Ald from the Durand Smokehouse. Mitch will tell you a little bit about his business and what he did with some grant funds and the impact to his business. It's pretty impressive, the small changes that they made that turned into large impacts to his business. But I will say that Durand is a combination establishment that slaughters, has a retail presence, as well as does some co-packing and a lot of sausage processing. So I hope I did the introduction justice, but Mitch, you can talk about your locations and things as you talk about the grants.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I want to give thank you guys for having the opportunity to come on today. Just kind of go over some of the experiences we've had with grants and what we were able to put them towards and how they're able to benefit us. Just to touch base too on what you both had said about the short courses. I've attended several at the University of Madison myself. In fact, we just touched base the other day, Jeff, and can speak to how helpful they are, in our business and just in the field. Things are ever changing in this industry, so there's a lot to be learned. Whether something that, in fact, I attended the same courses last time, one that I attended a few years prior, and just seeing the changes and what's changed in the industry and the advancements was very fun. So to go over some of the grants that we received, the first round that we'd received, it was the 2002 Meat and Poultry Supply Chain Resiliency Grant. For that one, we were looking into do in an addition mainly in packaging of RTE and cooked meat products to help gain separation. Like I said, we are a small facility, so ever growing, but helping that flow and separation of cooked and raw products was a huge advantage for us. So on that first round, we received $150,000 towards a slightly over 800,000 addition that we were looking to put on. Really, the idea there was to help increase the capacity in regards to slaughter, and then automate part of the packaging, and try to solve some issues that we had there. Um, I would say, since that grant came through, and the changes we made, we were to open up, enough space and increase the availability for slaughter and processing approximately 35 to 40% from what we were doing prior to that. Another big thing that we were looking into is trying to increase our retail presence. We do have a second location, just mostly a retail store, and just getting quality products up there, improving what we had already. And then another big thing was we have several private label companies that come through us that kind of have more of that farm to table mentality. A lot of selling by the piece, and then wholesale to restaurants and stuff like that. We were able to do quite an increase on our production on that side of things, which has been a great benefit to our business. Just the consistency that those private labels offer on just the amount of animals that we're doing per week is just nice to be able to rely on that. Another thing was to increase our RTE production. I'd say, depending on the time of year, up probably about 30 to 40% on that as well. Most of that, was just, slightly automating the process. We were able to purchase a second thermal former, really cut down on labor on a lot of, packaging that we were doing prior to that through just vacuum sealing and bags. So there is certainly some costs that came with that, but far outweighs, what we save on time on labor, far outweighs what we were doing prior to that. Then in the following year, 2023, we applied for a smaller grant, the Meat Processor Infrastructure Grant. That one, I think we applied for 50,000 on that. We received 25, which was fantastic. We applied that to mostly part of an additional stuffer that we put into production for sausage, and a big part there was just separating our ground beef lines, so that those guys can continue, and we can continue to produce that while we're processing custom processing, along with the second stuffer to continue our sausage production on that and just get some separation there. We added an automated or a double clipper system with a labeler on there to do lock coating, things like that, to keep up with the standard industry standards there. And those were probably the biggest increases that we've seen. But it was a huge help. Those are very large chunks of money that able to really get that addition and those processes going. And it's just the peace of mind knowing in the back of your head that you got that kind of gets you going. It was huge for us. We're the second generation. Me and my wife are taking over from her parents, and just the growth, as a family and as a team that we've been able to see here has been tremendous, and just making that money available. And I can speak for several other processors in our area that were able to receive grants as well. It was a huge help to all of us to be able to keep up with the demand that we've seen really increase over the COVID time period. So that's kind of a short idea of what we were able to do, but very, very grateful for everything that we received, and looking forward to the next round, because there's certainly many other options and places that we could apply money to really increase our production here and help the community around as well. One other thing I did not touch base on was with the increase in production, able to hire quite a few more people, and it's been fun watching our team here grow, and be able to provide livable wages to all these employees, and just helping their families grow as well. It's been something that on a different level we've really been able to appreciate, and it's been fun watching everything grow around here. So kind of gives us a short idea. Once again, I appreciate the time you guys allowed me to come on here and kind of express that, and just really excited for this next round of grants, and would like to see these programs really continue. They're a huge help to us.
Thank you, Mitch. In looking at, we'll get into it during my presentation, but meat processors that receive grants are required to do reports, progress reports on what's happening with the grant dollars, and then a final report. And these grants are really meant to increase throughput, increase harvest capacity, or both. And in reading through Mitch's final report, uh, it did all of those things for that establishment, and we are happy to see that. I am going to try to share my screen. We do have a backup available if this doesn't work, but can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks good, Jeff.
All right, thank you. So I'll go through this relatively quickly. The reason that I can breeze through this at a fairly rapid pace is there is a webinar posted on our website at the DECAP website that goes over all this information as well, and all that information is still pertinent. I will say that these grants, because I'll forget to say it, it's a smaller pool of money. It goes back to the baseline this year where the maximum grant award is $50,000 per establishment. It does fit very well into equipment purchases, which Mitch talked a little bit about, and their stuffer and things like that. So it does it's custom made for that. It works really well for that. That's not the only thing you can do with the funds, but it seems to be a very popular choice to do with the grant dollars. So if you go to the DACAP website, first of all, here we have highlighted on the home page egg development. So you would click on the egg development drop bar, go to Economic Development Innovation Center, and then click on Meat and Livestock Development. The information about the grants are there. Past recipients' names are there. You can see here in this screenshot that the processor grant webinar that we did a couple of years ago, still pertinent information to the grants, can answer some additional questions, is posted on that as well. So the meat processor infrastructure grant really is meant to grow the Wisconsin meat industry and improve long-term viability. And through healthier meat processing establishments, it also helps with the viability of the livestock community in Wisconsin as well. And these grants, we get a lot of question on this. The grants are available to new or existing processors. You do not need to be an existing meat processor, and we'll hit this a couple of times during the presentation. If you do not have a meat processing license, either through DACAP or the USDA, you will be required to get one before the end of the 2-year grant period. Funds are distributed through a competitive review process. So in the past, we've had a lot of applications, I should say, and then those applications are reviewed. And the best applications, the best proposals are the ones that get funded. And the grant cap is $50,000. Project period is 2 years. So a relatively lengthy turnaround period. You won't need to be rushed if the equipment is on back order or there's holdups with construction and things like that. It is 2 years to finish the project. And I should say that matching funds are required. So if you do get a $50,000 grant, it is expected and required that you would invest $50,000 into the project yourselves. And the matching funds expense during the project must be documented, and the money needs to be spent. So if you buy a piece of equipment, you would need to pay for that piece of equipment, and this grant reimburses you for that. So you would submit a request for reimbursement, and then you're reimbursed at that time. Here's just a quick timeline. I think the most important thing right now is that the grant application period is open. It will close on February 24th. So the grant application is relatively simple, and we do that on purpose. There's only, I think, 3 questions on it. The more detail, the better, but don't be intimidated if you haven't started the grant application yet. It's not a difficult process. There's not a lot of background information that's needed. So most establishments would have no problem getting that done by February 24th. You can see that we review and score in March. Applications are selected the end of next month, and the approval letters would go out early April. And then we would issue contracts. And contracts need to be signed as quickly as possible. If you do receive a grant, please review those. If you have any questions, let us know. but the grant period really doesn't start until that contract is signed. And the end of the grant period for this round of grants would be the end of April 2027. I touched on this before, but it's important, so I purposely do that a couple of times. Applicants must currently operate a DATCAP or USDA licensed meat processing establishment in Wisconsin. Custom exempt establishments are eligible. There's no problem there. Be engaged in livestock harvest or further processing. You do not need to be a harvest establishment or a slaughter establishment to qualify for these grants. The criteria are increased product throughput or increased harvest capacity or both. And so here I'll say again, operator plan to operate a DATCAP or USDA licensed meat establishment. Plan to operate is the key. So if you're starting a meat establishment, please apply for the grant, just knowing that before the final payment is made, we do need to see that you have become a licensed establishment. We do a check on your business, just being straightforward on that. So unpaid taxes, business taxes, things like that does get reviewed. Just the disclaimer that no employee of DATCAP or immediate family can apply for these grants, and you must not have another open grant with DATCAP at the time of the application period. This is probably a lot of the information that people tuned in to see. So eligible products, we do hope that harvest capacity or throughput grows 20% by the successful grant applicants. Not hard and fast rule, but that is really what we're looking for in those applications, is to see if there's a potential to increase throughput or harvest capacity by 20%. We do want to see that the increases in production do benefit the supply chain, whether it's purchasing more raw product to go into sausage production or cured meat production, or benefiting the livestock producers in your area through increased harvest capacity. Increasing efficiency is a big one. I know roll stock machines have been popular with grant funds, and on the surface, we can say, well, how does a roll stock machine increase capacity and efficiency at a meat processing establishment? Packaging can very often be a bottleneck area. So the establishments that have purchased that type of equipment have made big gains in efficiency and throughput. We do hope to improve the competitive position of the Wisconsin meat sector. We are a leader in the nation, or at least I believe so, and several others do. We have a great reputation for the quality of products that we do produce, and we want to maintain that and make sure that some of our aging facilities have access to funds to make improvements, whether it's through equipment or infrastructure, to remain competitive in the nation. And creating employment. Mitch mentioned that they added employees in reviewing some of the past grant projects that have completed. We are seeing that more employees have been added, and I think those jobs are good jobs, as Mitch said. I know that finding employees is a struggle right now for meat processors. We're all aware of that. But I think that the type of job and the efficiency that's created through equipment purchases, for instance, makes their work environment much better and makes for happier employees. Eligible expenses, this is recorded, so if I breeze too quickly through this, feel free to look at the recording, or this is in the request for proposals posted on our website. Engineering costs, so feasibility studies, things like that, design, construction, food safety advisory services. If you're wondering how to improve food safety within your establishment, you can reach out and use grant funds by hiring a consultant to do that. Equipment purchases, this grant is unique. A lot of the other grant programs that DATCAP administers do not allow for equipment purchases. This one does. And equipment installation, so you buy a piece of equipment, but it still needs to be installed, maybe wiring needs to be updated. That can be done with grant funds. Purchasing real estate is not an eligible expense. Repayment of existing loans or mortgages, again, is not allowed during the grant period or with the grant funds. Rent or contract payments that extend beyond the grant period are not eligible. I'll take a break here and say that the grant period really is from the day that the grant contract is signed until the end of that grant period, which is April 30th, 2027. So any expenses that are incurred before that contract is signed or after the performance period ends would not be eligible for reimbursement. Advertising isn't eligible. Legal fees, lobbying, fundraising, and any cost incurred. I've got a window in the way of that, but you can see the any cost incurred by or any firm for performing the work in preparation of the grant. So it falls outside of the grant period would not be eligible. Proposal review criteria. The review committee, it should be said that nobody on this call will review your grant. I'm not involved in selecting those grant processes. My job is kind of on the front end to make people aware of the grants and then work with the successful grantees through their grant period. But it is done by a review committee. Most of those would be industry professionals outside of DATCAP, and preference may be given to projects that demonstrate an industry-wide benefit, increased animal harvest benefiting multiple Wisconsin producers or farmers, and DATCAP may require additional establishment visits during the proposed project so that we can see the progress. DATCAP will develop a contract for each funded project, and they are individualized toward your project and your establishment. No funding commitment is final, and no project may begin before that contract is signed. That's the third or fourth time I've mentioned that because it's important to note. And grant contracts must be signed and returned to DATCAP within 30 days of those being sent out. And again, we're hoping to do that in April of this year. And if you don't return a signed contract, you will receive a letter from us saying that we're going to move on and give those grant funds to the next establishment in line based on their grant application scores. Again, this is a reimbursement grant. Payments must be made. Proof of payment must be sent to DATCAP, and then you would be reimbursed for that expense. An amount, this sounds a little more intimidating than it is, but an amount of 25% of the grant total will be held until the final report is submitted. So when you're getting close to finishing that project, make sure that you have your final invoices together, make sure that you have your final report together to make sure that you get the 25% final reimbursement in a timely fashion. Progress reports are due every 6 months, and if you do the math on that, that's not many. That's only 4 reports over the course of the 2-year performance period. We just want to know the project status, even if there has been no status or a hang up in back ordering of equipment or things like that. That's all we really want to know. We want to know the steps that have been completed in the last 6 months, actions that you plan on taking in the next 6 months, any barriers or issues with the project so that we can reach out to you and see if there's anything that we can do. There gets to be barriers, especially when we're building, adding on to establishments or buying equipment that sometimes gets back ordered and the supply chain isn't working to your favor. We just want to know those things. And a project summary. I won't spend much time on this, but the main thing is that we want to know how it impacted your business. You know, Mitch's final report for Durand Smokehouse was kind of a great model, if you will, because he laid out this is what we did. This is how much harvest capacity increased by able to cut meat and grind ground beef at the same time. That increased their harvest capacity, and that was all laid out in his final report very well. And then other insights. We get to record requirements. We do want to make sure that we see those receipts and proof of payment, canceled checks and things like that. Our grant specialists who are on the call today will reach out to if there's any questions on those. And we want to make sure that you're keeping that data too. So if there's questions later, we want to make sure that our files match your files. So hold on to those receipts. We do an audit. So our financial bureau, before those payments go out, look over to make sure that our grant specialists have caught everything, make sure that all the expenses match what the contract said, and that before the payment or reimbursement goes out. And finally, I'm going to tell you that these are subject to open records. So if somebody asks about your grant, we would have to supply them with the information on this was the name of your establishment. This is how much money you received through the grant project. This is what they were planning on doing with the grant. In a lot of cases, as I said, that the Durand Smokehouse final report was really a great model of what a final report should look like. That's something that we may ask Mitch if it's okay to share with future grant applicants to make sure that they reach that level of reporting that Mitch and the Durand Smokehouse did. So not to be intimidated, everything that we do at DATCAP falls under the state open records law. That is all I have. I'm going to see if I can stop sharing to see if there's any questions. That was kind of a blow through of a lot of different slides, but we are here to answer questions. Dr. Sindelar is still here in case there's questions about the upcoming harvest and fabrication school. Mitch is still here to answer specific questions about Durand Smokehouse's projects. Paul on the food safety side, and I'm here as well. So if there's any questions about what the grant funds can and can't do, please let us know. And I should also, while we're pondering questions, let you know that Brian Williams and Sabra Brodkey from the DATCAP grant staff are here as well. And they are instrumental. And Brian, I think he, our grant specialist that works specifically with these grants, would like to say a few words. So go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes,
my name is Brian Williams. I work in the ag development and the administration of many grants, including the meat processor infrastructure. Just a few notes I wanted to say. I want to thank Jeff for going through all the information on that. We did update a couple things. So one thing I wanted to mention is that unlike prior years, for the upcoming meat processor infrastructure grant, if you do currently have an open DATCAP grant, you still can apply. So if you do have one, please feel free to submit an application. We just changed it to say something like, I believe the exact wording is something along the lines of preference may be given to applicants that have not received grants in the past, but does not mean you're not eligible. With that, and I know this is a very minor thing, but just working in administration, so if you do receive a contract, the contract will specifically list a performance period, and I believe it'll be like the first line in that. That performance period will be initially for a 2-year time frame. We estimate currently it will be May 1st through April 30th. I'm sorry, May 1st of 2025 through April 30th of 2027. That is the eligible time frame in which to incur costs. Anything prior to that start of the performance period listed in the contract would not be eligible to be submitted for reimbursement. So we do try to get those contracts out prior to the start date, so that way it's signed and ready to go. But I know sometimes there's some question of when the project can actually start. So if you do sign it prior to that start date, just make sure that any costs that you're looking to claim for reimbursement or matching fall within that performance period listed on the contract. Otherwise, yeah, I think Jeff mentioned one unique thing about this is unlike many other grants, that equipment is eligible. So this is a good opportunity to propose that. So that's all I got. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks for the clarification on the open grant. So
I do see
So-
one question in the chat. Can grant money be used for a delivery vehicle?
Brian is on the line. He would be the right person to answer that. I'm going to say yes, but Brian can add detail. But that would fall under equipment.
Yep, for the meat processor infrastructure, I guess to the best of my understanding, that would be eligible to be put in your budget.
So past grant projects have purchased delivery vehicles. And feel free to unmute or type in the chat, whichever you like. Otherwise, if there's no questions, we'll have Dan wrap it up, but we'll wait here just a little bit to see if there's any questions.
You see another question in the chat. How much in total is allocated for grants? So in total, how much is there to give out?
That's a great question, and I apologize for not mentioning that. So this year, it does go back to the baseline that's written into the state budget. It's not a ton. It's $200,000 total, and so you can do the math on that. That if we give $50,000 per recipient, that's not a ton of grants, and it is a competitive grant process. But we do encourage you to apply. I know that Mitch had mentioned that they applied for 50,000, got $25,000, so that we could give out more grants in the last round. But Brian just mentioned that there is some grant funds that may be left over from unfinished projects or projects that came in under budget in the last grant project, and that would be added to that. So there may be just a little bit more available. So please apply. It's write a competitive grant proposal with as much detail as you can, even though that the grant application is fairly straightforward and simple with only 3 questions on it, but we do encourage everyone to apply. And when I keep saying baseline, so there's $200,000 per year available for meat processor grants. Last year, that was upped a little bit, or the last grant period that was upped a little bit by the legislature. So that's the legislature that dictates that. But we do anticipate $200,000 at least going forward.
Not seeing any other questions come through yet. We give it another minute.
I will say, while we're still here and right before we wrap up, if Brian or Sabra can put the email address for the grant inbox in the chat, that might be a good tool for you to have. If you do have questions coming up, feel free to drop an email to that specific address that works with the grants. Otherwise, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Yep, DATCAP, dadgrants at wisconsin.gov. So that is now in the chat. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions come through, so I'm going to throw up on the screen just a QR code folks can scan for a short survey that we have. If they have any ideas for topics for future office hour sessions, things they'd like to see us discuss, or any guest speakers to come on to fill out the quick survey and let us know. what their preferences are. We're always looking for ideas of topics to cover and things that are of interest to the industry. So you can scan that QR code and let us know. Otherwise, I think that just about wraps up our session. So a big thank you to Paul, to Jeff, and to Mitch for joining us and talking about these topics today. As a reminder, today's session has been recorded and will be posted online for later viewing. We'll also email you a copy and include Paul's slide deck as well. And a link to where the grant application materials can be found on our website. Join us again this spring for our next office hours session. Like I mentioned, if you have any topics that you are of mind that you would like to see us discuss in a future session, let us know by scanning that QR code and filling out the survey. And with that, I thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you.